Hello, I'm Alex Gupta with UATV. A major cyber attack recently disrupted government agencies and private enterprises around the world, including in Ukraine. Speaking with us today is Andrii Bezverkhyi. Mr. Bezverkhyi is the CEO of SoC Prime, a cybersecurity management company. Hello, thank you. Welcome to UATV.
Hello, Alex. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I want to ask you, what happened yesterday?
Yesterday we got hit by a major attack, and it was not just about Ukraine. So 7 countries in the world got hit by a ransomware called Petya, and it was part also of the bigger attack. And the scary part about it is that all kinds of industries got affected. So as you mentioned, both public sector and private sector organizations got hit. Their files encrypted, tens of thousands of computers. So it was probably as big as a recent WannaCry attack in terms of impact, but not in terms of global geography. Ukraine was hit hardest.
How severe for Ukraine and the world is this cyber attack? Scaling it, just how severe is it?
So I would say that it is not the end of the world, but it is very, very critical. So on a 1 to 10 scale, I would give it 8, because this attack really impacted ability of people to use ATMs. They were encrypted. You couldn't pay for Kyiv Metro using a credit card because of encryption. Some of the online services were down. Retail couldn't accept orders. So it affected real lives. So when the cyber attacks happen like that, it's really, really a big concern and a big impact.
Do they have any idea who is behind it?
It's very early to draw the conclusions, but you can definitely say this is not some single individual in the basement writing the code. This is somebody, either a very organized cyber criminal group or a nation state. They had resources, they had time, they prepared in advance. They used several exploits, both public exploits as well as some private attacking techniques. So it's like a mix of the cyber attack used by cyber criminals and an APT. And investigation is still ongoing. I mean, yesterday we spent pretty much almost all the day looking into results of the attack, analyzing the indicators of attack, putting the big picture together. And new data kept coming up like all the 24 hours. So we were awake until 4 a.m. last night to actually put it all together and to draw some conclusions on who it is, what is the impact, how do you detect, how do you protect. And the investigation is still ongoing.
So you and your team were involved in a kind of a forensic investigation of what had happened, piecing it together?
Yes, so we worked both with the companies in Ukraine and also in Holland and in other European countries. So we received like 40 calls during yesterday. And there were some people to whom I talk every day, but also guys who I haven't heard about for maybe several years. And they said, yes, we've been attacked, we've been encrypted, what should we do? Is this kind of ransomware? How do we defend? How do we even detect where infected hosts are? Is it still going to spread? And it was not the first time for us that we hear such an attack. I mean, just 1 month ago, we had a WannaCry outbreak and similar situation. This is also when we helped to find detection controls. And even if you look back into history in Ukraine, in 2016, there was attacks which caused power outages, a black energy attack. We also were helping companies to detect the threat and to clean up the computers after the attack. So we were not really surprised, but at the same time, it was shocking. We never saw that so many companies in Ukraine at the same time, like banks, telecoms, public sector organizations, even some NGOs got hit. So we can say that individual users at home did not get hit, but any kind of enterprise you can think of was infected.
I want to ask, could this be worse? Could it be more severe? They shutting down a power grid, disrupting air traffic control, bringing down an airliner. Could it be worse?
In some extent, yes, of course, because we see both practical examples and proof of concepts of attacks that intervene with physical world. So there was already an incident when people shut down the power grid in Ukraine for a little time. This particular malware, it did not have such capabilities, at least from what we see right now from the public analysis. But there are now more evidence coming up that it was not just, one email sent out that infected companies. There is now a strong evidence building up that it was prepared in advance. It was an advanced persistent threat. And this means that attacker controls the network. If they control the computer network, they're inside, they have full administration rights. They can do anything that is connected to a computer. So if you can turn off the power from computer, they can do it. If you can block the ATMs, they can do it. So it's a question of actually finding the attackers in your network at an early stage and responding before they proceed to their goal. So to respond to such attack, we usually rely on US methodology called cyber kill chain by Lockheed Martin. So it's the same as in military. You need to see the adversary in advance, prepare, act, disrupt. If we don't do that, we see horrible things like that. Could they shut down an airplane? I don't think so. The networks are really segmented, even in Ukraine. But they encrypted the airplane flight schedule. So the people in the Boryspil airport, they couldn't know where they're flying out. It was down. They couldn't order tickets online. It was also down. So yes, it was a big impact. But
how ready is Ukraine for these type of attacks? How prepared are they? What is the level of sophistication?
Yeah, so for these kind of attacks, we can see the result. Ukraine is not prepared for that, to be frank. I mean, there are companies in Ukraine who did not get hit. We talked to some financial institutions who heard about attacks. They called us, but they never got compromised because they have super strict controls inside. They have application whitelisting. They are proactive about patching. They have security operations centers to monitor the security 5/8 24/7. But that's maybe like 5% of organizations in Ukraine. Everybody else is very vulnerable. And there are many reasons for that. It needs to be a joint effort, actually, both inside Ukraine but also globally to defend against such scale of attacks. So the whole maturity of security industry is not that high in Ukraine. It was building up in 2010 and forward, but since the last events, the last 3 years, people are not really thinking about cybersecurity much. They're more concerned with situation in Ukraine, geopolitical crisis, and the war in the East, and so on. So we can see that these attacks in Ukraine, 95% of our enterprise is not ready to face these attacks. And it's not just about the tools. The tools are available. They can be commercial tools, open source tools. There are plenty of technologies. It's about people, it's about a continuous education and process. You cannot defend against such attack in one day. No single vendor on earth will defend you against such attack. It needs to be a process, continuous. It needs to be a maturity program. I like to compare cybersecurity state a lot to aviation because I was actually studying in Kyiv National Aviation University. And in aviation, there are 9 phases of the flight. So when you get on the plane, there are 9 pretty much things that can happen from the getting into the plane to the descent, to cruise and to landing. And we know all the incidents that can go wrong, thus we don't wait for the plane to go wrong. In cybersecurity, you can use the same approach, but it's not being used. So the whole industry of cybersecurity globally needs to go through this route that aviation did in over 100 years. There is no 100 years for cyber. We need to do it in the next 5 years. Otherwise, there will be really will need to seriously consider of using digital assets in our business and critical infrastructure. And this is a question to every country out there, not just to Ukraine.
I want to ask you, will these attacks then continue? And will they be more severe, perhaps?
So we have reasons to believe that we will see even worse things happening this year than we saw with the Petya ransomware or with WannaCry, because there are many factors contributing to that. So first of all, the enterprise and the public sector do not keep up with the threat evolution. They need to be more advanced. The processes need to be measured and improved day-to-day, week-to-week, month-on-month basis. There were also huge leaks of the exploits this year. So there are certain actors called shadow brokers who are publishing the exploits on the wild. That means that every kid or student can download them, experience with them, and build the next WannaCry. And it will hit old machines, just like that. So once the advanced guys get to that, they can use both publicly available things and privately available things. And we will see even harder attacks. So attacks when people hit whole sectors of economy, hit entire country. This is a reality we live in right now. So there needs to be both local effort and global collaboration to prevent that.
And when you say ransomware, that means, what exactly is ransomware?
So ransomware is a kind of attack that gets on the computer and uses a native means of encrypting the data, but it uses it for malicious purpose. So it holds your data hostage. It gets inside, it becomes sneaky, it works in the background to encrypt your data, and then once it's done, it locks your computer and asks you to pay the ransom. The ransom is asked in Bitcoin, so you cannot trace the attacker. And it's been actually around since 1986, according to what I know. But the recent variants of ransomware, of course, started in like 2012. And we see it's like going up exponentially. It's an industry. People are earning money by writing the software and then monetizing them using anonymous cryptocurrencies. So in this case, ransomware did not really earn the money to the attacker. You can actually track how much they earned, and it's like $6,000. But it is used as a cleanup phase. It is used to distract from what the attacker was doing and to disrupt business in this case. Mm-hmm. So it can be used for malicious purposes. And when combined with other types of attacks, like autonomous viruses who can work without connecting to human operator, it can have devastating effects and spread fast, like we saw with WannaCry attack 1 month ago.
I see. Your firm, SoC Prime, what do they do?
SoC Prime is a security startup established in 2014. We are founded in Ukraine, but we are funded by US and European capitals. So we are working as a global provider to detect advanced threats and to educate enterprise about how to defend. So usually SoC stands for Security Operations Center. So any company that is building, improving, or plans to build Security Operations Center is our customers. Most of our clients are from Europe, so like 75% of customers are there, also in US and Canada. And we partner with global companies like HP, IBM, Splunk. And mainly we develop products to actually detect advanced threats. So we build like threat modeling agents, which tells you, is your enterprise vulnerable to, for example, PTO, WannaCry, Black Energy, any other attack. And we can tell it in real time. So it's just like innovation. We can tell what can go wrong and where you have the gaps, how you fix them. So we are building this advisory module and have people use it to simplify security, simplify understanding, and also to measure how they work with security. But when attacks like that happen, we actually drop everything we do in development and just dedicate 1 day, 2 days to build up the defense capabilities and collaborate with any company that reaches out to us. So that's why, on one hand, it's good that we have R&D in Ukraine because we're in the epicenter of the events for the last 3 years.
My final question, I just want to know, as a cybersecurity expert, what would be your advice? What would you like to tell governments, private enterprises, everybody about what the future holds, what they need to do to prevent this from happening?
So there's a complex of things that needs to be done. Yes, so first of all, there needs to be a framework that continuously improves maturity of cybersecurity. And we see initiatives like that in Europe with GDPR, with initiatives like that in US with NIST cybersecurity framework. The framework needs to actually be built in mind with, there needs to be time and needs to be a lot of steps taken to improve security. And the responsibility of the regulators is to measure continuous improvement. You cannot just come to every price tomorrow and say you should have like 100 of products and 20 people or 50 people looking over security. That's not going to happen. So there needs to be a smart framework in place. There needs to be support for both enterprises investing into security to improve their posture, and also support for the companies who are helping them to defend. So there needs to be collaboration between public and private sectors. And there needs to be a global regulation which actually helps to defend. If we have things like exploits running out in the wild and being developed by several nation states, we don't trust that anymore. I mean, if somebody hacks an airplane, there is no legit reason behind it for the global humanity. So this needs to be some kind of consensus quorum who decides on those things. There needs to be regulations, investments, and there needs to be support for people building up security. So it shouldn't be punishable, like if you don't have security, but it should be encouraged. And then I think the situation will improve. And we see a lot of companies putting a lot of effort into that all over the world. So everybody from Canada, US, all the way to Japan and to Africa, there is initiative there. It needs to be supported. And in Ukraine, we also need it a lot because we are right in the epicenter of the different cyber actors who are either staging attacks, doing the proof of concept here, or doing some real damage like we saw in the last 24 hours.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Bezverkhyi. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex. It was a pleasure, and I hope that some advices be useful.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you. We'll try. I'm Alex Gupta with UATV. I was speaking with Andrii Bezverkhyi. He is the CEO of SoC Prime, a cybersecurity management company. You're watching UATV.